Hey guys, Jordan here. Today we're taking a look at a new case from APNX. This is their V1W, a dual chamber style case with a little bit of a twist on the traditional design. We've also got some adjustable parts here. You can see we have a new front panel. There's also a vertical riser, and we also have some adjustable options for intakes as well. So let me get this out of the box, I can tell you all about it. There's the side of the box with the full spec. If anyone is interested, you can have a pause and a quick read. But of course, I will go through the main bits as we go throughout the video. So it looks like we've got a little accessory box first of all to take out, and also an instruction manual or user guide. Very nice closed cell foam. We generally don't cover the packaging unless it's notable, but this is very dense, so should protect your case in shipping. Here we have the V1. It's actually very... I was wondering if I was going to get a shock. And again, okay, leave that in. This is the V1. Now, looking at it this way on, you can't see the big difference there is from the dual chamber. But if I turn it this way, you'll see we have a 45-degree intake, kind of like we saw on the NZXT H6. Now, this is, as you can see, a wooden panel for the black and white. You can also get a white and a black. I'll put that on the screen so you can see what they look like. Let's have a look at the optional one that's included in this box. This seems to be a more black, kind of traditional style. So just go around the front to make this a little bit easier, but this will just pop off and then be able to be replaced like that. Look, it changes the look of the case drastically. Actually, I think I do prefer the dark wood though, personally. There's both of the finishes side by side. As we've got the front panel off, it's a good time to talk to you about the fan options at the front. So you can do a 360 rad. You can also do three 120mm fans. You can do two 140s. You can even move the bracket to put two 160mm fans in. A little bit of a different change there. Now, as you can see, no fans included, but they did send me a box of 30mm thick fans, so I'm guessing we're going to be using these when we do a build with it or something like that. But as far as I know, they don't come with any, which I think is a little bit of a shame. But I guess it does give you a little bit more flexibility in what you choose, because a lot of case fans do come with RGB in the front and plain at the back, which personally I don't like, which is something you do pay for. So maybe coming without any fans is a better option in the first place. On the top, you can see how that 45-degree angular intake will impact the air performance. Now, when I tested the NZXT H6, it was surprising the drop that I got in the temperatures by having the 45-degree fans rather than going 90 like a standard dual chamber design. So we'll obviously see how that performs when we do some testing on it at the later end of the video. But there's also got our I/O one here as well. So we've got a power button that looks to be illuminated, little reset one above it. Got two USB type A, a type C, and also a microphone headphone combi jack. This is also a push pin panel, so you can easily take that off. Fine, but not to the point that I'd say it's filtered. You're more than likely going to use this as an exhaust anyway, so it's not really going to matter too much. Then you can see our 360mm support in the top there. You can of course do two 140s if you'd rather, and that's another frame that you can take out fully to put all your fans in and bring it in afterwards. There's also a nice little hole there, so if you do have fans on the top or you're going to route them from underneath and over, you can bring them up and then straight down to the back of the motherboard tray. Nice little touch. For our accessory box, before we actually get inside, I was hoping this was all going to be in a nice little plastic box, but we've got some spare clips which are good to see. They can get a little bit worn out over time. And then we have got an accessory bag with some more thumb screws, motherboard standoffs, and the usual kind of bits and bobs you see, but I think it would be nice to have it in a little plastic divider box, especially as the cases upwards of £100 generally come with those. Now to take a couple of screws off before we can actually take the glass out, but that's good to keep it nice and safe in shipping. Then we can pop that off. That feels nice and thick. I'd say that's 4mm tempered glass. A little bit of a tint on there as well. So into the belly of the case, one nice thing we have here are some options for our motherboard mounting. This will support ATX, MATX and also ITX motherboards if you want to use it that small in a case like this, but the option is there. However, for most people using MATX, you do have two different options to mount your board. So currently this is set into the lower position, but you can move it up higher if you wish. With the standoffs in the default position, you have 82mm of space from the top of the motherboard to the roof, and then in the higher position you have 62. Plenty of room if you want to use the 360, maybe the height thick. When they bring the 360 out later this year, you might be able to mount that in there with its, I think it's like 35mm and 30mm thick fans. You have got the kind of space for that to fit in the top. There's also some pass-throughs there as well, and we've also got some nice grommets on the left hand side for your 24-pin, maybe your graphics card to come up through as well. We've got a dust filter in the bottom of the case, so if you've got any fans bringing fresh air from the bottom, that will be nicely filtered. And then we have also got some support for a rear exhaust 120mm fan, again not included. There's also a pre-installed graphics card support, which is a nice little thing you generally don't see. We'll see how well that works. So it looks like we've got some nice adjustability on there, so you can bring that up and down and then kind of pivot it in depending on how long your card is. Maybe if you've got a 4090 or something, you need to use it really far out on the edge, you've got the option to do that. You can of course take it out if you don't want to use it at all though. While we're on the topic of graphics cards, you can support a card that's 395mm long and then CPU towers up to 170mm tall. Before we go to the back, let's just take a look at the bottom. We have got a little 45-degree channel for cables to come up and plug into your motherboard. Then on the bottom up to, again, 360mm of space for fans. You can of course do two 140s if you'd rather. It also has a thumb screw to take that whole panel out to make it nice and easy to install. Running out of space on the desk, but I want to quickly show you the vertical riser cable that they have sent as well. This, I'm going to guess, is going to be an optional extra because the riser cable that it comes with is a Gen 5 riser. So I don't know if you can make it out at the top, it says PCIe 5 on the top, so that's going to be expensive in itself. But this is really heavy duty. The case itself is an absolute lump as well, so that will sit in like that. Looks very nice. I really like the stamped branding on there, looks very clean. Then of course that will support up to a 3-slot card. You might be able to get away with a little bit more if it's not going to get up around that little panel, but you might interfere with it if you try and use the card that's too thick. I certainly will make use of this when we go for a build though, and also the fans that they included, because you can support up to 10 in this thing. Didn't really talk about the bottom of the case, but there's a nice gap if you're going to use any fans for some fresh air intake at the bottom, and of course the dust filter that I showed you on there. So for our rear panel, again on push pins, and on the back of that we have got a nice magnetic dust filter, which will be our intake for our power supply, which is mounted at the top. To 220mm in length will be supported there, obviously being intake on the side, so we're going to draw in some fresh air with that filtered panel. Now further down, I've taken out the screws for it, but this is now on a little magnet to just release and open up this storage bracket. You can also really easily just slide that off as well if you don't want to use it. But here we can support a total of 2 3.5 inch and 6 2.5 inch, or you can do 2 3.5 and then 4 2.5 inch drives. This is also a Z shape or a Z shape, so when it's installed you still have lots of room underneath. Of course a lot of people may just take this out, but if you're going to do maybe an editing PC with a lot of scratch discs, you may make use of this, so it's a nice thing to have. Then of course you can see underneath we have loads of space for any cables, so you could route your PSU round and then back through. We've also got some nice cable tie points, loads of Velcro ties pre-installed. There are also some other places you can do zip ties all the way around. In terms of our front panel, let's just undo this and have a look at what we've got here. So front panel wise, we have a Type C, also a Type A connector. We've got our front panel all on one. Then we've also got the LED switch on a separate one. We'll have to look at that more when I get it into a board. And we've also got our front panel audio. We've also got a little cutout for any fans you're going to install on the 45-degree angle. You can bring those straight through to the back of the case. And lastly, for anyone wondering specifics, you have a total of 90mm of depth to play with at the back of the case. I'm now going to get my test system in this, and then we can do some thermal testing and just give you my thoughts and conclusion. I am going to put 2 Corsair fans in the front, 2 120s, and then 1 rear 120 as an exhaust. In the scenario that the case doesn't include any, like this one, I do add in some Corsair fans that are from my 4000X. Then that gives me a good baseline as it's pretty consistent. We would test with fans if they're included, but of course this one doesn't come with them, so I will be adding some in. So now I'm going to do all my testing. I'll be back in a couple of seconds, but this will be multiple hours for me. And then I'll give you my overall thoughts, my build experience, and whether it's worth the purchase. On to the conclusion. First of all, the build experience has been very good and extremely easy to build in. I also moved the standoffs to the top position as I prefer the look, given my test system's got an air cooler and it matches up better, looks a little bit more level. I would leave it lower though if I'm going to use an AIO. I really like the cutouts for the motherboard tray. It feels a lot like the NZXT, which they might have taken some inspiration from. There's also a little cable clip for the rear fan as well, which keeps it nice and tucked away, pinning the cables nice and tight. I routed the EPS connectors up and along rather than bringing them straight down like I usually do. I really like how clean it makes it at the back. If this was an actual build over a test system, then I'd also route the heatsink fans along the same way as well. Now, leaving the hard drive and SSD sled wasn't an issue, as I could also tuck down all the cables between that and the back of the motherboard. I've also got a Molex on there that I didn't use, so I pushed that down as well. Now bear in mind this is a test system and not a full build, so I didn't spend loads of time on it, but for more complex builds or systems with loads of RGB, you'd certainly want to take it out, but for a clean or simple build, you won't need to. The GPU support is solid, I really like that, and even though it would add some extra cost, it's worth having, especially as the majority of cards nowadays are very heavy. Now, one major thing that some people might not like is the lack of support for rear connect motherboards. We may well see a version that supports that, but I imagine it will just be a different case, especially as the movable standoffs would mean it will need a lot of grommets, which might just make it look a bit silly. I also have some additional information for the riser and the front panel that I was wondering about in the overview section. The vertical riser kit will be available for $79, which I don't think is too crazy considering a Gen 5 riser starts at around $65 on its own. The mount's also solid and the thickest metal that I've seen on all the ones that I've used. Also, the front wood panel is only going to be available with the case, not as an optional extra. However, at the time I filmed the overview, I only had the information that there was going to be 3 colours, but now there's going to be a wooden version for each of those, so you have a total of 6 different SKUs. A separate panel might be nice as an optional extra though, especially if you fancy changing it up halfway through owning the case, and of course with enough demand like anything, they might consider making it. So let's get on to the temperature testing. My test system is a 5800X3D cooled with the Noctua NHU12A. We have the heatsink fans and the case fans all set to 1500 RPM to keep things as consistent as possible. The motherboard is the Asus X570 TUF Pro Wi-Fi 2 with 16GB of Kingston Fury Beast running at 3600 megatransfers per second. We also have a Solidline P44 Pro 1TB for storage, all powered by a 850W EVGA Platinum power supply. So I test with Cinebench, which is a synthetic benchmark to really pump some heat into the case. I saw a high on the CPU of 78.3 with an ambient of 20.6, which gives a delta of 57.7. Putting that into the chart, the V1 comes out as the 4th coolest case that I've tested yet, so a very good result. As I mentioned, I think the angle can help a lot with the temperatures, as this and the H6 both have that similar design and both have very good temperatures. The build quality on this case as a whole is superb. It's very heavy as well, but it does translate into good quality construction. There aren't any fans included, as I mentioned, but that can be a pro or con depending on how you look at it. Maybe a version that includes some fans, or maybe offering a bundle with a discount when you buy them together could be a good way of going about it. Now, I would like to see a little bit of a better accessory box, at least having the screws in one of those plastic dividers. The case as a whole screams quality, so when you come to that box, which is displayed as the very first thing you see in the packaging, opening up to reveal some little plastic bags is a little bit disappointing. Thankfully, the case though does make up for that, especially if you open the accessory box first. Overall, for my first APNX case, I'm very impressed. Superb build quality, flexible design, one that they've clearly sat down and thought about, and then a nice classy look on what is traditionally a very copy and paste style. So I'll add the links for this in the description box below if you want to pick one up. Let me know if you have any more questions or if you'd like to see a full build and what kind of spec you'd like to see. I do have some additional fans that we could use, or we can maybe look at getting some 160mm. Let me know. Thank you all for watching. Get subscribed if you enjoyed this video and so you don't miss my next upload. Thanks to APNX for sending it over for me to review, and I'll see you all in the next one.